And we are back for the Thousand Worlds Book Club, and we're talking about Starlady. We are joined by Varys. Sir Preston, forgive me if you can. I bear you no ill will. Wait, forgive you? Wait, what did you do? Oh, perhaps nothing. I believe I misspoke. That doesn't sound good. Anyway, Starlady is an odd little story about pimps and hookers in a space slum. The story is filled with some weird language that makes reading it a bit jarring. Additionally, character motivation is a bit off. It's unclear why characters are doing the things they're doing. And what exactly happens in the end is rather ambiguous. I thought ambiguous endings were a staple of George R.R. Martin's work. That I will grant you. Our time spent with tough voyaging has perhaps made me forget how George R.R. Martin normally ends a story. Men of Greywater Station left our hero's fate unclear, though it was grim. Bitterblooms also left our hero's fate unclear, and it again was grim. And In the House of the Worm left our hero's fate unclear, though it was a bit more hopeful. Starlady has no hero in it. Unless you count Harry Hal, who is not a great guy. Starlady seems to be an early exercise in exploring protagonists that have shaky morals. Incidentally, there was a Harry Hal in the Night's Watch, clearly an homage to this story. I will say that in many ways, Starlady feels like Arya's adventures in Bravos, as it's filled with prostitutes, a colorful cast of characters, and stars a fish-out-of-water girl learning how to navigate a foreign place. And like Arya, Janie from Rhiannon tries to shed her identity. She even chews her lip at one point, and the whole story is filled with the word stupid. So Starlady takes place on this rock, which is an artificial world located between the planets of Prometheus and Rhiannon. It's located in deep space and orbits no star. I imagine it's a large space station built on a rogue asteroid rather than a full planet. Or who knows, maybe it's just a floating star base like the Death Star. This story came out in 1976, a full year before Star Wars. What we know is that during the double war against the Findi and the Harangans and before the collapse, this was a naval strike base used by the Federal Empire on the Harangan front. Centuries later, when this story takes place, this rock is now ruled over by Prometheus. Prometheus is a rather technologically advanced world that recovered quickly after the collapse and only had a brief interregnum. The Prometheans are exceptionally good at genetic engineering, and they regularly alter themselves to give themselves long lives, increased intelligence, wings, gills, you name it. Back during the Double War, it was the Prometheans who formed the Ecological Engineering Corps and built the seed ships like Tuff's Ark. And it was the Corps that caused whatever was going on in the House of the Worm. Today, though, the Prometheans keep their genetic altering knowledge a closely guarded secret, and this rock seems to have descended into becoming Prometheus's slum, where reject Promethean alters are dropped off and Prometheans go to participate in drug use, prostitution, and human trafficking. It should be noted that Prometheans often alter themselves so much that they need to kidnap other humans from this rock in Rhiannon just for procreation. The Prometheans take them all. Hey, watch your language. My apologies, it's just that human trafficking doesn't sit with me very well. Don't you kidnap children and use them as tongueless assassin slaves? Touché. So our story begins with Janie from Rhiannon and a character called Golden Boy. Janie's background is never really given, but she seems to have come to this rock for drugs. Golden Boy is, well, Golden Boy. He's a complete mystery, and probably the key to understanding the whole story. He is silent, has silver hair, golden skin, pointed ears, and is beautiful. In many ways, he reminds me of a Targaryen or a Tolkienian elf. Anyway, the action really begins when Janie and Golden Boy are robbed and beaten by a thug named Cronny, who works for a gangster named the Marquis. Janie and Golden Boy lose their tickets off-world, and Janie is raped. Harry Hal watches the whole thing go down and decides to take them in. Janie has to work as a prostitute, though. At Hal's home, we meet his only working girl, Mayless, who seems to have lost respect for Hal, but is with him nonetheless. We find out that Hal used to be a better pimp and had better fighting abilities, but now he has a destroyed arm, which the Marquis gave him. Hal shows Janie around town, and they meet Stumblecat, another of Marquis' men, who is a reject from Prometheus. Janie quickly discovers there's a pecking order on this rock. Hal defends Janie and Mayless from everybody else, but the Marquis and his men are on top. They can take anything they want from Hal and can have Janie and Mayless anytime they want. And yes, I'm using a picture of RoboCop as a stand-in for the Marquis. Janie, though, seems to accept all of this and seems content just going home and snuggling with Golden Boy at night. Golden Boy doesn't do anything, he just sits around Hal's home all day. Eventually, though, we discover that Hal has bigger plans for Golden Boy. Golden Boy is to be a premium prostitute that Hal can peddle to the upper class of this rock and Prometheus. Why Golden Boy is so special and so marketable is a bit of a mystery. Hal's research finds that he might be a member of a Harangan slave race called the Bashi, or perhaps he's an altered human from old Earth. Hal doesn't know. The Marquis, though, finds out about Golden Boy and sends his thugs Cronny and Stumblecat to steal him from Hal. They do, but not before having sex with Janie and Malis. Hal is far too scared to take on the Marquis, so Malis leaves him and Janie decides to face the Marquis alone. She is absolutely desperate to get Golden Boy back. Janie's entire strategy is to make a scene in the plaza and to shame the Marquis into fighting her in single combat. It works, and the Marquis arrives to fight Janie one-on-one. Harry Hal shows up to the plaza claiming that he wants to see Janie learn a lesson from the Marquis, and Stumblecat purposely doesn't check Hal for weapons very well. The fight begins and Janie is thoroughly getting her butt kicked by the Marquis, and then Hal stabs the Marquis with a simple dinner knife held by his crippled arm. Stumblecat then kills Cronny and takes control of the Marquis' business. Hal initially believes this to be a happy ending for him, but then Stumblecat asks Janie to join him in exchange for unlimited access to Golden Boy. Ignoring Hal's professions of love, Janie accepts Stumblecat's offer and leaves Hal. The story ends with the line, "In the end, some of them were dead, the rest survived." So, Varys, what's your opinion of that ending?
Well, I'm not quite certain what it's referring to. Does it mean that Cronny and the Marquis are dead and the rest survived? Or does it mean that more deaths are yet to come?
Well, I think that depends on what you thought Golden Boy was.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, on one level, Golden Boy is the symbol of innocence that Janie wants to preserve because she's lost it in herself. And I imagine Janie is a symbol of strength that Hal admires because he's lost that in himself. I'm not sure what Hal is to Malis.
Maybe the story is a simple tale of unrequited love. Malis loved Hal and couldn't stand that he had fallen for Janie. And Hal loves Janie, and Janie loves Golden Boy.
That's all true, and if this is just a story of a few unrequited loves, then I think the death toll is done. Janie lives happily ever after with Golden Boy. Golden Boy earns lots and lots of money for Stumblecat. Harry Hal is left with nothing, but he has removed his main rival, so perhaps he can get his business going again. That largely depends on Stumblecat. Malis is simply gone, but maybe she'll come back to Hal since he's killed the Marquis. It's unclear.
Hooray! I love a happy ending.
But George R.R. Martin doesn't, and that ending wouldn't really make sense of the story. Janie's love for Golden Boy is clearly abnormal. He's never said anything, and all he does is sit around all day. Janie is willing to kill for him, die for him, and live a brutal life of prostitution for him. There's clearly something going on here. On top of this, Hal's love for Janie seems a bit suspicious as well. It seems possible that Golden Boy is in fact an alter from old Earth that makes people fall in love with him, or makes people fall in love in general. After all, Golden Boy is clearly messing with people's emotions, whether intentionally or unintentionally. It seems like only a matter of time before another conflict comes about.
That makes me think of that weird night when Malis scratched Golden Boy and then had sex with Hal.
Right? That came out of nowhere. Why would Golden Boy have such a strange negative effect on Malis, making her violent, when he had a completely different effect on Janie? It all makes me think that Golden Boy is not simply an aesthetic alter from old Earth. Why create love and attachment in some, but then violence in another?
So you think he's a Bashi, a member of a Harangan slave race?
I would say that's the more probable situation. The Harangans were a warlike race that used their slaves to do battle. They also engaged in psychological warfare, telepathically altering people's minds until they made bad decisions. Golden Boy may in fact be a weapon, creating conflict between people. It would explain Malis' violent streak and her desire to get Harry Hal to be violent. And it would explain Janie's intense unconditional love for Golden Boy that led to violence, and Harry Hal's weird love for Janie that also led to violence. Stumblecat did say that Golden Boy had some sort of empathic link between him and Janie and Hal. It may be Golden Boy that was intentionally or unintentionally causing everyone to be violent.
So what about that last line? In the end, some of them were dead, the rest survived.
Yeah, our author might be talking about a bigger body count. He might be talking about the population of this rock. There is a break before that line implying that some time has passed. If the sum had only included the Marquis and Crawny, then that break wouldn't have been necessary.
Maybe you're just being a pessimist.
Maybe, but 2 people is a pretty darn small body count for a George R.R. Martin tale. So Varys, is there anything else noteworthy about this story?
Well, just that it also seems to be a feminist tale of women being abused and trying to rise out of their situation using whatever agency they have. And it's important to note that the male in the story attempts to fall into the sexist knight in shining armor saving the damsel in distress role and is not rewarded for it. In fact, in the end, Harry Hal must feel pretty stupid for being so deluded.
Yeah, we're going to find this theme a bit in the stories to come. George R. Martin has a particular fascination with men erring and putting women on pedestals and feeling they're in need of saving. This really defines the Tyrion character and his relationships with Tysha, Shay, Sansa, and Penny. And this will come up a bit more in this Tower of Ashes and Dying of the Light. And that's all for Starlady. Next time we'll be talking about Nightflyers, one of the most nuts, off-the-wall, batshit crazy stories that George R. R. Martin has ever written. It was even made into a horrible, horrible movie. I've left links to the story, the audio, and the movie below. See you next time.